Good afternoon, friends. Warm welcome on this TDS series, all about TDS and TDS, including practical aspect. We will see in the next 4 days. We have our speaker, great CA Rajesh Mehta sir with us from Indore. We have our guide, JCF Navi Mumbai President, CA TC Bafna sir. We have a renowned chartered accountant from Navi Mumbai, C. Abhishek Shah. We have one more renowned chartered accountant from our Kandivali, C. Ashish Bakliwar sir. Would like to welcome all. Now would like to request C. Abhishek Shah to have a welcome address.
Thank you, Virat. Once again, welcome all the members. Rajesh sir, welcome. Bafna sir, Ashish bhai. So, friends, we are coming to more webinar series. One is on faculty development program. So, where you will get the enhancement and presentation skills and all these things you will cover. So I request all the members to please, if you are interested, then join. And second one is recent judgment under GST law. So both the series one will start from tomorrow and second will start from day after tomorrow. So I request all the members to please join that webinar series. Now I request C. Ashish Bakliwal, Kandivali, Mumbai, to address the gathering.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasant evening, and we are here to learn about TDS. TDS is very basic concept which we need to follow in day-to-day life. Even a very small company has to follow it, but many times we do mistakes. So, Rajesh is here. He is going to explain us about TDS provisions from very basics and in a very common language. And I know him from the last many years. He's very renowned speaker, regular speaker on TDS specifically. He presented various organizations on TDS issues with the government and authorities. So I hope that this will helpful to every one of us. If only we know basics, then also he will go towards the next level also. In the 4-day series, we're all going to take benefit from his knowledge and his practical experience. With this, I welcome every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish bhai.
Now I request.
And now would like to request TC Bafna sir to formally inaugurate this 4-day series and also introduce our today's speaker, CA Rajesh Mehta sir.
Thank you, Virag, and good afternoon to all. And again, this Virag, I'm giving this my thank you, Virag, that I'm giving an opportunity to warm welcome to the Honorable Speaker Rajesh Mehta ji of Indore, who is a chartered accountant and DISA certified, who is having vast experience on TDS, GST, audits, etc., and search and seizure. Since 1996, he is specialized in search and seizure and penalty, etc. He was chairman of All India Federation Tax Practitioner in 2018-19 at Central Zone. He was secretary in 2014-15 and joint secretaries in 2012 and 13 at this practitioner association. Now he is a national vice president of All India Federation of Tax Practitioner Central Zone, and he is also a good orator, regular eminent speaker on the various platforms of ICAI Bled branches and all. He is a regular writer, articles on the tax judgments and ICIC, where newspapers, other newspapers, TV channels, radios, etc., etc. He is a very good academic career achiever and awarded by Government of Rajasthan many times. Great. Most welcome, the Rajesh Mehta on this platform. Most welcome.
And now would like to request Rajesh sir to take the proceeding ahead.
Thank you, Virag. Respected TC Bafna Sahab, President JCF Navi Mumbai, my dear friend Ashish Bakliwal ji, CA Viraj Shah ji, CA Abhishek Shah ji. So first of all, I heartily thanks to the organizer for organizing this TDS webinar series, because many times we go in the seminars and in the one day, very small time of 1 or 2 hours, many times some of the important issues cannot be touched and cannot be explained in a short time. So the organizers, looking at the importance of the topic, divided this webinar series in the 4 days, and in these 4 days we will touch most of the important aspects of the TDS and TCS, theoretical aspect, legal aspect, and practical and procedural aspects. So first, in the today's webinar, we will be discussing issues on salary, TDS on salaries.
Sir, just accept regarding the screen sharing. So your presentation will be visible to us and all the attendees. Yeah, perfect, sir.
So, dear friends, so now I start my deliberation. So my today's discussion will be mainly on the TDS on salaries. My son CA Apur Mehta has also helped me, and he is also chartered accountant. He has done his CA from Mumbai, and he also helps me a lot in various discussion and critical analysis of various income tax issues. So first of all, I would like to discuss that tax is required to be deducted by any person responsible for paying any income chargeable under the head salaries. Tax is to be deducted at the time of payment. Under the head salaries, tax is required to be deducted only at the time of payment. Unlike various other provisions of TDS, where TDS has to be deducted at the time of payment or credit, whichever is earlier. But under the head salaries, as per section 192 of the Act, TDS is required to be deducted only at the time of payment, not at the time of accrual. TDS is to be deducted during the whole year by computing the estimated income of the employee, and then we have to work out the average rate of income tax on the estimated income. Then this average rate has to be applied for every month's salary, and this average rate has to be applied for deduction of TDS. If the taxable income of the employee is nil after rebate under section 87A, then no TDS is required to be deducted. That is, all the deduction under section 24, under section 80C to 80U, 87A are, if there is no taxable income and no tax liability after these deductions, and even after a deduction under section 87A, then no TDS liability will be there. Any excess, many times many of the employers or the persons who are DDOs, drawing and disbursing officers, thinks that when and how much times we are to deduct the TDS on the salary. Many of the employees tries and wishes that TDS on their salary will be deducted only in the last 2-3 months of the year. So during the starting 9 months, they want that. From the April to December, they want that no TDS should be deducted on their income. And there are some judgments. There is a judgment of Madhya Gujarat Wijh Company Limited, Ahmedabad Tribunal, which has said that in this judgment it has been held that if the employer has intentionally not deducted the TDS and the employer deducted the TDS only in the last month, then employer will be liable to pay interest under section 201 subsection 1A. But Uttarakhand High Court, in the case of CIT versus Enron Expert Services Incorporation, held that if TDS has not been deducted in any month, then any shortfall or any excess can be adjusted in the last month or at the end of the financial year, but it should have been adjusted before the end of the financial year. So there are so many judgments which says that if there has been any shortfall in deduction of TDS on salaries, then as per section 192 subsection 3 of the act, if there has been any excess or if there has been any shortfall in the TDS, then it can be adjusted and it can be recovered at the end of the financial year. Then no interest default will be there under section 201 subsection 1a. However, we should also keep in mind that unless and until it is necessary, we should not avoid deducting TDS equally in all the 12 months. So it will be the practice of the employer to deduct TDS equally, even if there is a exemption, there is a relaxation given under section 192 subsection 3. Relief: if any employee gets arrears or advance of the salary, then during any financial year he is getting salary of more than 12 months because he is getting any advance salary or he is getting any arrears of salary. So due to this his tax rate has increased, tax rate is higher, then he can take the benefit of section 89 subsection 1. But the benefit of section 89 subsection 1 cannot be received by an employee of a proprietorship or a partnership firm. If any employee is employed in any proprietorship firm or employed in any partnership firm, he is not allowed benefits of 89 subsection 1. All other employees of state government, central government, any other corporation, any other institution, university, college, school are allowed relief under section 89 subsection 1 on the arrears or advance of the salary. For this purpose, they have to file the form number 10E. Now this form has to be submitted electronically on the e-filing portal of the income tax before filing of the income tax return. And if any of the employee receives any voluntary compensation on voluntary retirement or termination of his service as per VRS, voluntary retirement scheme, then he will be allowed exemption under section 10 subsection 10C of the act. And in such a case, such employee will not be allowed any relief under section 89 subsection 1 of the act. If any employee receives salary from more than one employer during the year, or if any employee had done employment under one employer during the starting 6 months, and after the 6 months he changed his job and he joined another company, so during this year he has successively been employed in another year, so there have been 2 employers during the year. So how he will be, is he required, is it compulsory for him to report his other employer's salary to another employer? He may, he is not compulsorily bound, but any employee, if during the same year employed by more than 1 year, then employee has a choice that he may, if during the whole 12 months he has been employed by more than one employer, he has a choice to report his other salary to only one employer, and that one employer will be liable to deduct TDS on his salary. Or if during 6 months he was with another employer and after that 6 months he joined another job, then he may report his salary to the subsequent employer of his previous employer. So the subsequent employer will also consider his previous salary and will deduct tax accordingly. And the subsequent employer will also consider the TDS deducted by the previous employer also. Such information has to be submitted in the form number 12B to the subsequent or to the another employer. Other income. Is it necessary? Many times the employees think that he has various others income in addition to the salary. So is he compulsorily required to inform these other incomes like rental income, fixed deposit interest income, any capital gain, short-term, long-term capital gain to his employer? No, he is not compulsorily bound to report his other income to the employer. He is not bound even to report his even a saving bank account interest, even his fixed deposit interest or any rental income to the employer. But he may at his own choice report his any other income to the employer. But such other income will not result in reduction of salary. Due to so, he is not allowed to report his loss from any other income. He can only report loss from his self-occupied house property or any other house property, but such loss will not exceed rupees 2 lakh. And he may report his any other income also, saving bank account interest, recurring deposit interest, fixed deposit interest, or any other capital gain also to the employer at his own choice. So here I will also discuss some of the issues which are important and useful relating to the taxation of the salaried employee. So there has been an amendment in the assessment year 2020-21, for which we will have to file the returns in the forthcoming months. In this, there was a great reduction to the salaried employees, because earlier to assessment year 2020-21, the employees had to, if any of the employee had more than one residential house, and if he had more than one residential house as self-occupied, then he could have claimed interest only from the one self-occupied house. And in case of the other self-occupied house, even if that house was vacant during the whole year, he had to calculate the let out income. He had to treat that another house as a deemed to have been let out, and he had to pay tax on the income from house property even if that house was vacant during that year. So there was a relaxation from the assessment year 2020-21, in which it has been held that it has been allowed that if any of the employee or if any of the individual person has two residential houses, then that person, that individual can treat these both houses as his self-occupied house. So he will not be, that another house will also not be treated as his deemed to be let out. But if he has more than two residential houses, then other houses in addition to those two houses will be treated as deemed to be let out. Only the two houses will not be treated as deemed to be let out. Other houses will be treated as deemed to be let out, and on this house property income will be calculated, and he will have to pay tax on this. And he may inform this to his employer also, or if he does not inform this to his employer, he may include this deemed to be let out property income in his own return of income. Loss under the head income from house property can be informed to the employer. House property loss can be set off maximum up to rupees 2 lakh as per section 71 subsection 3A. So if there is a loss more than 2 lakh, he will not be allowed to set off either in his own return or through the employer. If he has any other income, he wants to report this other income, as I have discussed earlier, he will have to inform this in a plain letter. As per rule 26B, there is no specific form specified for this information. He will only point out these incomes on a plain paper, and he will write down the verification as given in the rule 26B. He will write down that I so and so do declare that what is stated above is true to the best of my information and belief. Tax is to be deducted on the estimated income. Estimated income is to be calculated after taking into consideration the taxable salary, all the perquisites and taxable allowances. Many of the times, many of the employers, mostly in the case of the state or central government, perquisites are not properly calculated. So the employer, being the DDO, drawing and disbursing officer, are responsible to calculate the correct taxable allowances and correct perquisite in the hands of the employee, and also required to deduct the tax on the such perquisite and taxable allowances also. And in the case of a person, deduction under section 16 regarding standard deduction of rupees 50,000 is allowable, and professional tax and entertainment allowance to the government employee is also allowed. And the tax has to be deducted on any other income intimated by the employee. All the deductions under section 80C to 80U are allowable. These deductions will be allowed by the employer in the computation before calculating the tax deductible from the employee's salary. The person responsible for making any payment of income under the head salary shall obtain from the assessee proof of evidence regarding various deductions in form number 12BB. Form number 12BB specifies various details. Employer will have to obtain the details of exemption of HRA as per section 10 subsection 13A, leave travel concession of LTA under section 10 subsection 5, interest under the head income from house property under section 24B, all the exemptions and deduction under section 80C to 80U. All these proof will have to be given to the employer along with the form number 12BB. Amount of rent paid in case of HRA. The employer will obtain through the form number 12BB amount of rent paid to the landlord, name and address of the landlord, PAN number of the landlord. If aggregate rent paid during the year exceeds ₹1 lakh only. If the rent is not more than 1 lakh in a year, then PAN is not required. Rent receipts are also to be given to the employer. These receipts and these other evidences are to be kept by the employer with himself. Whenever it is required and desired by the income tax department, by the TDS department of the income tax, then they may call for these supporting evidences from the employer to ascertain the correct deduction of TDS. Evidence of expenditure. In case of leave travel concession, evidence of expenditure is required to be furnished as to the employer as per Rule 26C. LTC cannot be claimed for foreign travel. Any leave travel allowance, LTA or LTC will be allowed only travel within India, not out of India. If any employees have utilized this LTA or LTC for foreign travel, he will not be allowed. An employer will be allowed to deduct TDS on such LTC and LTA, treating it as a taxable income. So there is a judgment of Bangalore Tribunal, and there is another judgment of State Bank of India versus ACIT Jaipur Tribunal, in which it has been held by the Jaipur Tribunal that since the employer was under bona fide belief that LTA and LTC out of India is also allowable under the head salary, so the employer did not deduct the TDS under bona fide belief. Therefore, in such a case, TDS will be deducted, but TDS should have been deducted, but the employer will not be liable to penalty under section 271C of the Act, and this is a reasonable cause under section 273B. So the commissioner can give relief under section 271C. Deduction of interest under section 24B. Interest on borrowing can be set off against salary income. If any person has taken a home loan, then he can adjust this interest only up to 2 lakh rupees out of his income from salary. His details are to be submitted to the employer are the interest payable or paid to the lender, and name and address and PAN number or Aadhaar number of the lender. If any of the home loan has been taken from other than the financial institution, say for example, any person has taken a loan from his friend or relative, then his PAN or Aadhaar number will also be intimated to the employer. And if the loan has been taken from any bank or financial institution, then PAN number and interest certificate from the lender will also be furnished to the employer. In case of the home loan under section 24 subsection B, there is no restriction to take the loan from friend or relative, but deduction under section 80C is not allowed in case of loan taken from the friends or relative. Only 80C deduction is allowable when the loan has been taken from financial institution, home finance companies or any bank. Then other evidences which are to be obtained by the employer are all deductions claimed under section 80C, 80CCC, 80CCD1 regarding National Pension Scheme, and 80D Mediclaim expenditure or Mediclaim premium evidences are to be furnished to the employer. In case of the 80D medical expenses for senior citizen, if any of the employee has incurred any medical expenses for his parents, then also he is allowed an exemption of ₹50,000. If his parents are senior citizen, in his parents does not have any Mediclaim policy, medical insurance policy, and any of the expenditure has been incurred on their treatment, then maximum 50,000 expenditure can be allowed under section 80D, and such details will have to be submitted to the employer but it should have been ascertained that such payment should be by any mode other than the cash. Any cash expenditure in any hospital will not be allowed under section 80D. And if the employee himself incurs any of the expenditure, he is allowed 25,000 amount. But if any person who is not a senior citizen, then he is not allowed any expenditure of medical treatment. He is only allowed the exemption for medical insurance premium of 25,000. And if he is a senior citizen, then about of 50,000 he is allowed a medical insurance premium under section 80D. So any person can claim maximum 1 lakh rupees under section 80D, 50,000 for himself if he is a senior citizen or any of his family member is senior citizen, and 50,000 for his parents if any of his parents is senior citizen. And in addition to this amount, a deduction of rupees 5,000 is also allowed for preventive health checkup. Expenses for preventive health checkup can be paid in cash, but this 5,000 is aggregate even for the self, family of the self or parents. So aggregate only 5,000 is allowed for family and parents, and this 5,000 is included in above 25,000 or 25,000 for parents. So there is no separate deduction for rupees 5,000 for the parents, and this 5,000 will be covered under the maximum 1 lakh rupees. 80DD, maintenance expenses of medical treatment of dependent who is a person with disability. If any of the dependent of the employee is a person with disability and he is dependent upon him, then any of the expenditure incurred on his treatment are allowable, or any of the amount deposited in an approved scheme of LIC are allowable under section 80DD. So the deduction with normal disability will be rupees 75,000, and if the dependent is a person with severe disability, then the deduction will be 1,25,000. 80E, education loan. If any person has taken education loan on his own education or on the education of his spouse or his children, then he is allowed a deduction of payment of interest. So under section 80E, deduction is allowed only on the payment of interest, not on the principal amount, and for the interest, deduction is allowed only on payment basis, not on accrual basis. So there is no upper limit of deduction of 80E interest. There can be unlimited, but this will be allowed for only 8 years starting from the year in which the repayment has been started. And education loan can be taken for any higher education even out of India also. 80EA, if any of the person has taken any home loan, then he is allowed a deduction under section 80EA in addition to deduction under section 24. But any double deduction is not allowed of the same amount under 80EA and under section 24. But it will have to be seen that for this purpose, the loan should have been sanctioned between 1st April 2019 and before 31st March 2021. And in this case, stamp duty value of the house property should not exceed rupees 45 lakh. And it is also a condition that that person should not own any other residential house property on the date of sanction of the loan. Say for example, any person has taken a home loan of rupees 35 lakh for the purpose of purchase of this house property. So if there is an interest of rupees 2,80,000, in such a case, any person can take exemption under section 24 of rupees 2 lakh, and remaining 80,000 can be taken here under section 80EA. Or say any person has paid an interest of rupees 4 lakh or accrual of interest of rupees 4 lakh, then deduction under section 24 will be rupees 2 lakh, and remaining deduction will be here under section 80EA. But double deduction is not allowed, but separate deductions of the same loan is allowed under section 24 and under section 80EA. The maximum deduction under section 80EA is 1,50,000. 80EB, any employee will be allowed any deduction under section 80EB for purchase of any electric vehicle, any interest taken on loan, any interest paid on loan for the purchase of electric vehicle, but such maximum deduction will be rupees 1.5 lakh. And it is also a condition that loan should be sanctioned by the financial institution during the financial year 2019-20 to financial year 2022-23. And there is no limit of amount of loan or price of the electric vehicle. So there can be any limit. The amount is not limited of regarding the price of the electric vehicle or the regarding the loan of the loan for the vehicle. But interest amount is limited only up to 1.5 lakh. So this deduction is also allowed to the employee while calculating the TDS if he has taken any such loan. ATG. If any of the employee gives any donation to PM Relief Fund, PM CARES Fund, CM Relief Fund, then employer will allow the deduction of such ATG donation. But if any of the such donation is not to such a specified institution, then if any of the donation has been given by any other charitable institution which are not specified, then which are not covered under PM Relief Fund, PM CARES, CM Relief Fund and other such specified institution, then the employee will have to himself claim such a deduction of ATG under his own income tax return, and employer will not allow such deduction. Say if, for example, any person is given any donation to any Goshala. So Goshala are not approved institutions for the purpose of allowing exemption under section ATG by the employer himself. So employee will have to take deduction under section ATG in his return himself. And there has been an amendment in the recently under the taxation and other law relaxation of certain provision ordinance 2020, in which it has been allowed that if any of the person has made donation even up to 30th June 2020 under the PM Relief Fund, PM Care Fund or any other donation qualifying under section ATG, even though the employee will be allowed to claim this in the year assessment year 2020-21, if any donation made up to 30th June, it will be treated to have been paid before 31st March 2020. If any of the employee withdraws any amount from recognized provident fund, then if the salary and if his employment under the employer was not more than 5 years, then such withdrawal will be taxable in the hands of the employee. Then employer will be required to deduct 10% of the TDS on such withdrawal. But if the employee has been in continuous service for 5 years or more with the same employer, then there will not be any deduction of TDS and the such recognized provident fund withdrawal will not be liable to income tax. And if he has served with the employer for less than 5 years, but he has transferred this amount to the national pension scheme, then it will not be taxable. Then employer will not be required to deduct TDS on this. Or if the employment has been seized only because of some reason beyond his control, then he or because of his ill health, then it will not be taxable in the hands of the employee. So TDS will also not be required to in such cases. If the amount of withdrawal is not more than 50,000, then also there is no requirement to deduct the TDS. And even if it is the amount is more than 50,000 and but not more than 2.5 lakh, then employee is allowed to furnish form number 15G or 15S to the employer, and then the employer will not be required to deduct the TDS. And if any of the employee has not withdrawn his PF amount from his PF deposits, even after retirement or even after cessation of his job, then any amount lying deposited in the recognized provident fund, if any interest is earned on that amount, that will be liable to tax under that income from other sources, because after retirement from the job, there is no employer-employee relationship, so that interest will be taxable under that income from other sources. Any uncommuted pension is always taxable in the hands of the employee. If any pension is commuted, then it is exempted as per section 10 subsection 10A of the Act. In case of the pensioner of the government or other departments, many of the institutions, central government, state government and other institutions after retirement of the employees pays their pension through banks. So if any of the pensioner is receiving his pension through a bank, then after retirement, if he is receiving the pension through the bank, even if he was the employee of central government or state government or any other institution, even though after retirement, the relation of the pensioner and relation of the bank will be employer-employee relationship, even if he was not the employee of that bank. But that bank is disbursing his pension only in the capacity of the previous employer. So the bank is required to deduct the TDS if the salary of the pensioner is taxable, and the pension will be treated as a salary under section 192, and employer, that is the bank is a deemed employer bank giving the pension. So the bank will be required to issue the form number 16 also to the employee, because the previous employer will not issue form 16. The bank is disbursing the salary, so bank is required to issue the form number 16 to that employee also, and bank will deduct TDS same in the same way like the employer was deducting earlier. There is a CBDT circular also dated 13th January 1998, in which CBDT has told that bank cannot deny to issue the form number 16 to any employee who is receiving the salary, even if there is no bank employer-employee relationship to such pensioner. Salary received by MP, MLA and minister. If any of the person is member of parliament or member of legislative assembly, then such member of parliament or MLA are not the employee of the government, because they are the elected by the public. So any of the salary being received by them is not a salary. This is their income from other sources. So in such a case, if they are receiving any perquisites, these perquisites will not be taxable in their hands, because perquisites are taxable only in the case of the employer-employee relationship and if he is only an employee. So the MP, MLA are not employee. So any of the perquisites are not taxable in the hands of the MP and MLA. There has been a judgment of Rajasthan High Court. And if any of the salary is received by chief minister or a minister, then such chief minister or minister are treated as an employee of the government. So their salary is taxable under the head salaries. So they will be treated as a salaried employee, and they are not the MP, MLA, because they are elected as chief minister and they are the employee of the state government or central government. So salary of minister and chief minister are taxable under the head salaries. And any of the daily allowances, constituency allowances, etc. received by the MP and MLA are exempt under section 10, subsection 17. So any of the person disbursing the salary to this will also have to keep this in mind while deducting the TDS. Section 115 BAC. Section 115 BAC has been introduced by the Finance Act 2020. So as all of you are know that most of the employees who are having various deductions under section 24, under section 80C to 80U or any other deductions, then it will not be beneficial for them to opt for 115 BAC, because there are so many deductions. But many of the senior citizens does not have any deduction of home loan interest, of insurance premium, or they do not have any such more investments. They may opt, looking at the circumstances, every time every person will have to calculate whether new provision is beneficial for him or any normal provision of which were existing as earlier is beneficial to him. Every assessee will have to calculate. Any person, if he is having any income from business or profession, then he will have to opt for 115 BAC by way of filing a return, by way of filing a form online before filing the return of income. And such person who is having any income from business or profession will not be allowed to change this option in any subsequent year unless his business is stopped. But any of the person who is receiving only income from salary and not having any income from business or profession, then he is allowed to change the option new and or normal option every year. But any of the employee who is any of the employer who is required to deduct tax from the employee, then as per the recent CBDT circular, employer is also required to obtain a declaration from the employee that which option the employee wants to choose, whether the new option under section 115 BSc or the normal provisions. If any of the employee has given option to choose the new provision of 115 BSc, then employer will be required to deduct the TDS during the whole year as per the provisions of 115 BSc, and the employer or employee will not be allowed to change this option during the whole year. But at the time of filing of the income tax return, assessee employee will again be allowed to change or select the option whether he wants to opt for the new 115 BSc or the new normal provision, even if he had opted 115 BSc with the employer. But if any of the person is opting for 115 BSc, he will not be allowed various deduction, LTC, HRA, standard deduction of rupees 50,000, entertainment allowance, professional tax, standard deduction. Any of the person who is receiving any family pension of his deceased spouse or deceased parents, then he is getting standard deduction of rupees 15,000 under section 57. So this deduction will also be not allowed under the family pension. And interest on loan for self-occupied property will also be not allowed. LIC other deduction under section 80C will also not allowed. Any deduction under section 80TTA regarding saving bank interest received by any person who is not a senior citizen of rupees 10,000 will not be allowed. If any person who is a senior citizen, he is allowed deduction under section 80TTB of interest on saving bank account, recurring deposit, time deposit in a bank or financial institution. Such deduction will also not be allowed under section 115 BSc. Any health insurance premium, medical expenditure will also not be allowed to the person who is opting for 115 BSc. And some other 80DD, 80DB, 80U deduction will also not be allowed to such person. 80E deduction for interest on loan for higher education will also not be allowed to the person. Interest on loan for certain house property, which is the new provision of under section 80EA, will also not be allowed to him. 80EB interest on loan for purchase of electric vehicle will also not be allowed. 80G deduction will also not be allowed to him. Any loss from house property will also not be set off, but he can carry forward this loss to the subsequent years. And so these are the some of the important discussions which are related to the taxation or tax deduction of the employees, and some other important issues also which an employee must also keep in mind while filing his income tax return or while making his tax deduction or intimating his income to the employer. So there are some other important issues also which I would like to discuss here. So many times all the employees, many of the employees have income from interest with the deposits with a bank. Interest on deposits with the bank. So when any person has any fixed deposit with the bank, many of the employees or many of the persons adopt a practice, or many of the bankers adopt a practice to obtain the form number 15G or 15H from the depositors. Many times any person reaches to his bank, always bank said to the person that kindly give the form number 15G. If you are a senior citizen, kindly give the 15H. The bankers many times never ask that whether he is eligible to give this form or not. So nowadays form number 15G and 15H ask for a various details, and 15G, 15H, if any of the employee has furnished wrong information in the 15G, 15H, he will be liable to prosecution under section 277 of the Act. So before furnishing any form number 15G or 15H to any of the person who is deducting or who is allowing you exemption from deduction of TDS, you should, the person who is furnishing 15G, 15H himself have to be aware, because when at the time of prosecution the employer will be in the jeopardy, he will have to face the problem, not his banker. Because nowadays bankers are sometimes aware, but before some earlier years, bankers were not aware. Bankers mostly used to take the form number 15G, 15H from any person, even if he was having fixed deposit interest of rupees 10 lakh or more. So 15G can be furnished by any person who is having any interest income not exceeding rupees 2.5 lakh. If any of the person is not a senior citizen, then he can only furnish 15G when his interest income is not exceeding 2.5 lakh from all the sources, not from this bank. If he has fixed deposit in various 5 other banks also, and some personal interest income is also he's earning from unsecured loans given to his friend and relative, then his all interest income under section 194A under the head interest will not exceed 2.5 lakh, then only he can give this 15G, otherwise he cannot give. And in case of the senior citizen, if any of the person is a senior citizen, then even if he is having interest income exceeding rupees 2.5 lakh from all the sources, from fixed deposit, from friends and relatives, if his interest income is, say for example, rupees 4 lakh, but if his tax liability is nil, then he can furnish the form number 15H. So there is a difference in the case of 15G and 15H. 15G cannot be furnished if interest income is exceeding rupees 2.5, and 15H can be furnished even if interest income is exceeding 2.5 lakh, but tax liability on his total income should be nil. Then only he can furnish form number 15H. Minors income. Many of the employees does not show the income earned by their minor in his income tax return. So this is the wrong practice by them. If any of the employee has any fixed deposit in the name of his minor child, then he is responsible to disclose this interest income to his employer. If he
सर
is
आपकी स्लाइड नहीं दिख रही है सर, स्क्रीन शेयर नहीं हुआ है सर.
अब वो स्लाइड खत्म हो गया. नाउ आई एम वर्बल.
ओके सर, ठीक है सर.
So, if any of the minor income is having any income, then employer is either required to inform this income to his employer, or if he does not inform it, he is not bound, but he will be compulsorily required to include this minor's income in his return of income, even if tax is not deducted, because Income Tax Department has introduced a form number 26QAA for the banks. If any of the interest is even if less than 40,000, then the banker is required to inform this amount to the TDS authorities by way of filing form number 26QAA to the Income Tax Department if interest is less than 40,000 and TDS has not been deducted in any person. Because many of the assessees used to adopt a practice that they make various FDR of rupees 1 lakh in their own name and in the name of their minor children in various banks. So their interest from every bank should be less than 40,000. So banker will not be required to deduct TDS. And many of the employees used to think that the Income Tax Department will not come to know about their interest. So Income Tax Department had introduced form number 26QAA. So every financial institution, every bank or every cooperative bank is required to intimate this to the Income Tax Department, the details of interest which is less than 40,000 on which no tax is required to be deducted by every person. So this information will be populated in the income tax return of the assessee of the employee, because now in the forthcoming days Income Tax Department is going to already give you the populated income tax return. Pre-filled income tax return will come to you. So you will find income tax income of your minor children and of yourself also in the return form, where even no TDS has been deducted on your fixed deposit or recurring deposit by the bankers. And one important thing, many times we see that on the front page of the newspaper there are sometimes news that there is a newborn child of 9 days. The Income Tax Department has issued a PAN card in the name of the 9 days old child. So nowadays the PAN card is online, so even you can get the PAN number within 1 hour also. So you may find news on the newspaper that the 1 hour old child has got a PAN number. But this is only for the newspaper. There is no use of any PAN number in the name of the minor, because any income of the minor is includable in the hands of the parents who has greater income, either father or mother. If any of the minor has earned any income from his own skill, from his own intelligence, from his manual labor, or any minor child is physically handicapped as defined under section 80U, then income of such minor will not be included in the hands of the father. So any of the minor child, if he has earned any income from his own manual skill, from his own manual labor, or he is physically handicapped, then in his name PAN number can be obtained and his income tax return will be filed separately. If he is not covered under these conditions, then father will have to give his own PAN number for his fixed deposit, or from anywhere he is getting income, father will have to quote his own PAN number, so that TDS will also be deducted in the hands of the father. So this thing we have to keep in mind. So, and employees must also have to keep a thing in mind nowadays, that many times many of the employees file their income tax return and they claim various other allowances which have not been allowed even by their employer. So many of the allowances which are not regularly or not allowed as per the law, but employees claim these allowances in their income tax return. But nowadays income tax department has started doing scrutiny, and income tax department matches this online, that if any of the employee has claimed more allowances as allowed, even not allowed by his employer, and not reflected in the form number 24Q TDS return, then his return may be taken up in the scrutiny. So the employee will try that all the allowances which are legally allowable will only be allowed by his employer and will be informed in the form number 24Q. So there will not be any much mismatch in his income tax return and the data furnished to the department through 24Q. So there will be less chances of his TDS case scrutiny. And nowadays income tax department in future going to start the pre-filled ITR. So the employees will also get the pre-filled ITR also. And from the 1st June 2020, we will not be getting any form number 26 as on the traces portal, because income tax department is going to skip the provisions of 26 as. So any of the information of TDS will be directly loaded in their portal, not by way of the 26, but this will be either populated in their pre-filled income tax return, or this will be given to them in their portal under the separate headings. And one important thing that if any of the person has attained age of the 60 years on 1st April 2020, generally we assume that if any of the person who is born on 1st April 1960 will be completed 60 years, will become senior citizen on 1st April 2020. But there is a CBDT circular, there is a judgment of High Court in which it has been held that any of the person born on 1st April will be deemed to have been completed his next age on the one day before. So any of the person who is born on 1st April 1960 will be senior citizen on 31st March 2020. So if we file the income tax return of any such person, we shall keep in mind that any of the person born on 1st April 1960 is senior citizen on 31st March 2020. And nowadays, form number 16, part A and part B both are to be downloaded from the traces portal. Before 1st April 2018, part B of the form number 16 used to be issued by the employer himself. But nowadays, Part A and Part B of the form number 16 will be downloaded from the Traces portal. And there is a condition under section 115 BAC that if any of the employee opt for the new tax regime of a lower tax slab and without claiming any other exemption under section 80C2U and under section 24, etc. So such employee will be required to inform this in the return form filed under section 139 subsection 1 of the Act. So is it compulsory for the employee to file his income tax return within the due date specified under section 139 subsection 1 of the Act? No, in my opinion, he may file his income tax return even up to 31st March 2021, because the date of section 139 subsection 1 is pari passu with section 139 subsection 4, because the 139 subsection 4 is the extension of the 139 subsection 1. So even if any return is filed within due date of 139 subsection 1, but before the end of the financial year, it will be deemed to have been filed in accordance with the section 139 subsection 1. However, interest or any other penal consequences will continue. This cannot be barred, but exemption under section 115 BAC will not be denied. New option will not be denied to him. Any conveyance allowance to any handicap is allowed. If any of the person opts for the 115 BAC, then he will not be allowed the conveyance allowance. But if any of the person is under the normal regime and if the person is handicapped, then he will be allowed the conveyance allowance of rupees 3,200 per month. The conveyance allowance of rupees 1,600 per month to other employees is already discontinued by way of introducing the standard deduction. And one important thing in the case of the salaried employees or any other individual, we must keep in mind that if any of the person has taken any home loan for repairs or renovation or reconstruction, repairs or renovation of his residential house, then he will be allowed deduction under section 24 of rupees 30,000 only. He will not be allowed deduction of rupees 2 lakh because he has not purchased or constructed any residential house. So we must keep in mind that in this case, deduction, the employer will be required to allow only deduction of rupees 30,000. He will not allow deduction of rupees 2 lakh in such a case, and in such a case, deduction under section 80C will also not be allowed to such person. In case of family pension, if any of the person is getting any family pension from any person, from any bank or from any government authority, then such family pension is not a salary. It is taxable under their income from other sources. So even the employer or the bank or the deemed employer is not required to deduct TDS in case of the family pension, because the family pension is not a salary. Even if it is exceeding 2.5 lakh, or even in case of the senior citizen it is exceeding 3 lakh, or in case of the super senior citizen aged above 80 years, he is getting pension of more than 5 lakh, even though it is, he will not, bank or employer, deemed employer will not be required to deduct TDS in case of the family pension. And in case of the 15G, we must also keep in mind one more thing. However, many of the important issues we will be discussing in the tomorrow or the day after tomorrow's important discussion, but it is here pertinent to mention here today also. So I am discussing today also this point. There are so many other points which are not relevant to salaried employees, but these are important, and so we will be discussing them in tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. But one point, that in case of furnishing of form number 15G or 15H, the employee must also keep in mind that his any income under section 192A, 194A, 194I, if any of the employee or if any of the individual is getting rental income also, he is getting interest income also. If he is getting rental income of rupees 1 lakh, he is getting interest income of rupees 2 lakh against an FD. So his income under section 194I and 194A, if accumulated, then it is exceeding 2.5 lakhs. So such person will not be allowed to furnish form number 15G if he is not a senior citizen. And if he is a senior citizen, he may furnish form number 15G, but his tax liability should be nil. So in case of the not senior, a person who is not a senior citizen, it must be kept in mind that any income under section 194A, 194D, 194DA, 194I, if aggregated, it should not exceed 2.5 lakh. All this income has to be aggregated. You will find on the form number 15G, there is a column number 16 and there is a column number 18. Column number 18 asks for the detail that how many 15G you have furnished to other persons. Kindly give the number of 15G furnished to other persons and kindly give the income under those heads. So even if you have not furnished form number 15G for those, but if you are having any rental income and you are also having any interest income, and both these income are after aggregating exceeding rupees 2.5 lakh, that is the basic exemption limit allowed to individual, then he will not be allowed to furnish the form number 15G. So he must be aware, otherwise income tax department may issue a notice of furnishing a false statement, false declaration. So he may be penalized or he may be prosecuted under section 277 of the act if his income will be more higher and if his intention will be wrong, found to be wrong, if there would be any malified intention. So the employee or the individual must also himself be aware before giving any form number 15G or 15H. So I think most of the important discussions relating to tax deduction in case of the salaried employee is I think covered by me, but there are so many other important issues under the TDS which we will be discussing on tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, because those discussions are too vast. So the organizers have done a very good thing that they have divided our TDS discussion in 4 days, so we can be able to cover all the important aspects in these 4 days. So thanks a lot to all of you for giving me a time and sparing your valuable time and giving me a patient hearing. Thanks a lot to all.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, there are few questions.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can you please repeat that case study, that CIT, Android Expert and Madhya Pradesh?
On which, sir?
That
Yes.
CIT case study, sir. Madhya Pradesh. Android Ispat.
Enron, Uttarakhand High Court.
Yes,
Uttarakhand
okay,
High
Uttarakhand,
Court.
okay.
Yeah. So in the case of the Uttarakhand High Court, it has been held that if any of the employer fails to deduct the TDS in equal installments, say for example, if the employer failed to deduct the TDS on the salary from the month of April 2020 up to December 2020, the employer failed to deduct the TDS, either nullified or not. Then, but the employer deducted the TDS in the subsequent month in the January 2021, February 2021, and March 2021. During the same financial year, the employer recovered all the TDS, so he will not be a defaulter. He will not be deemed to be in default because he has covered all the TDS before the end of the financial year, because section 192 subsection 3 says so. But there is a judgment of Ahmedabad Tribunal which has held that if there is a malified intention, then he will be liable. But in my opinion, Income Tax Act has nowhere stated that what is the malified intention and what is the not malified. It is the wish of the employee to pay the tax, because Income Tax Act has nowhere specified that any employee will be required to pay any advance tax. Any person who is not an employee, he is required to pay the advance tax. And if any person who is not who is an employee, then he may pay his tax during the same financial year at any time. So law does not restrict. Law does not restrict, but this should not be made so much public though, so that every time the employees will come and request us that during the month of April to December, please do not deduct any TDS, and during the last 3 months, his so much TDS will be deducted that he will not be able to take any money to his home in the last 3 months. So mostly employer will adopt the practice that the tax is equally deducted. However, law allows that tax can be deducted in any month in any proportion. Income Tax Act nowhere specifies that he is compulsorily required to deduct the TDS equally. Otherwise, why the section 192 subsection 3 would have been there? Why there have not been any brought any amendment under section 192 subsection 3? There have been no amendment since up to date. So, if there has been any default, there will not be any interest under section 201 subsection 1A. Yes, sir. Any other query?
Yes, sir. One from Shilpa Shetty. What is Form 12B? Who has to fill 12B?
12B has to be furnished by the employee. 12B has to be furnished by the employee. If the employee is employed under more than one employer, either in succession or simultaneously, then he may furnish form number 12B to the employer of his choice. If he is in successive employer, then he may furnish this 12B. He will have to furnish this 12B to his successive employer, and if he doesn't furnish, then he will himself include the salary from both the employers in his return of income. And if he wish, he is not bound. If he wish, he may furnish to any of the employer of his choice if he is under simultaneous employment with two employers during the whole year. Yes.
Sir, okay, sir. Sir, one is explain the dim let out one more time, sir. One query from dim let out property.
From the assessment year 2020-21, there is a great relief allowed to the persons, to any individual, not only to the salaried employee, to the all individuals, that if any of the person has more than one self-occupied property, then earlier there was a provision that if any of the person has more than one self-occupied property, then only the one property of his choice will be treated as a self-occupied property, and another property will be treated as deemed to have been let out, and deemed rental income will have to be taxed under the head income from house property, and that will be taxable. So from the assessment year 2020-21, now two properties of the choice of the employee of the individual can be treated as self-occupied, for which he will not be required to show any deemed rental income. But if he is having 3 houses, then for the 2 houses he will be treated as a self-occupied, and another third house will be treated as a deemed to be let out, and for this the notional rental income will be calculated as per the income under the head income from house property, and such deemed rental income will be taxable under the head income from house property. So this is an amendment from the assessment year 2020-21.
Okay, sir. Okay. Sir, what about joint holder in case of house property loan? In case of loan, joint holder.
Yes. If the property is jointly owned, if the joint holder's name is there in the registry also, and the loan has been taken in the joint name also, then both the person, if they can take the exemption under section 24B and under section 80C in the proportion in which they are the owner, or in the proportion in which they are repaying this loan. But sometimes it happens that the loan has been taken in the joint name, but property is only in the single name. So in such cases, there is no clear-cut provision in the Income Tax Act. So in my opinion, if any person who is not the owner of any property, whose name is not appearing in the sale deed, but he has taken the loan, so in such a case, only the person whose name is appearing in the sale deed, who has got the property registered in his name, will only be allowed to repay the loan. he will only be allowed the exemption under section 24 or 80C. The another person will have to face the any litigation. He may be required to go to the CIT appeal to the ITAT, and then only he may get exemption. But there is no such clear-cut provision or any such case law in favor of the such persons.
Okay, sir. Okay. Sir, one interesting question from Santosh Malu. 1 year assessee has not opted for 115 BAC.
Yes.
And accordingly claimed loss on house property, including
Yes.
first year claim of pre-EMI interest. And
Yes.
then second year, he opted for 115 BAC and
Yes.
hence not eligible for any interest deduction.
Yes.
And in third year, if we go back to old provision, then
Yes.
can he claim interest deduction, including pre-EMI as not claiming second?
Yes, he will be allowed. He will be allowed. Only in the year in which he has opted for 115 BSc, in that year he will not be allowed 24B. But law nowhere says that any of his such pre-EMI law interest or any of his interest will lapse or any of his claim will lapse in subsequent year. Law does not specify. So he will be allowed. Certainly allowed.
Okay, sir. Okay. Sir, many participants are asking for the presentation. They liked it very much and they are asking that if they will be.
I am sharing it. Just I am sharing it here. Just I am sharing this PPT here.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And so tomorrow we will be I think tomorrow 1 hour 30 minutes will also be too less for us because tomorrow our discussion will be too long.
Right, sir.
So
right.
So tomorrow there are so many interesting issues also. So we will be discussing some important and interesting issues tomorrow.
Okay, sir.
And I am sharing my PPT here in the box.
Okay, sir. Sir, one question again. I mean, two questions from Santosh ji. In case
Yes.
of case section 80D, whether payment of insurance and also incurring medical expense is permitted from same
No.
parent. What is the limit
Yes.
of insurance is paid, expense not incurred?
No, if any of the person is enjoying two benefits, is not allowed. If any person has Mediclaim policy in the name of his parents and he is incurring medical expenditure on his parent also, he cannot enjoy two options at a time. Either he can claim Mediclaim insurance premium of his parents or he can claim medical expenditure of his parents. And in his same case also, if the assessee himself is a senior citizen, then either he can claim medical insurance premium or he can claim medical expenditure, only one thing at a time, not both things simultaneously.
Okay, sir.
So I have
Sir,
shared my
guide on 7,50,000 limit.
I am unable to share here PPT.
Sir, you share with me, we will share, sir. No problem. Sir, one query. Please guide on 7,50,000 limit cap as specified by Finance Act 2020 and how to calculate taxable perks on contribution and interest on that.
So interest, so they will specify the Finance Act has specified that they will specify the manner to calculate interest, taxable portion of interest, proportionate interest will also be taxable. Say we know that there was a earlier under section 14A rule 8D, there was a rule to calculate the interest incurred for the exempted income. So in the same manner there will come new rules to calculate the taxable portion of the interest for the contribution by the employer in excess of 7.5 lakh. So whenever the rule will come to calculate this excess interest, and that will become taxable every year.
Sir, Vipul Makwana has asked question. Can you please explain again 15G and H and its TDS implication?
Yes, sir. However, 15G we will discuss it tomorrow also, but now I am discussing again. If any of the person, say for example, he is not a senior citizen, he is having interest income. He has interest income from a bank of rupees 2 lakh against his fixed deposit, and he has rental income also of rupees 1 lakh. So these income are rupees, he is having interest under section 194A income rupees 2 lakh, rental income is 1 lakh. Then his income under 194 and 194I, if aggregated, exceeds 2.5 lakh. So he will not be allowed to furnish form number 15G. because the language of the section 197A says that, I am here reading the language of the section 197A. So the language of section 197A clearly says, and when you will see the form number 15G, for briefness, I am reading the form number 15G. That will be much better. When you will see the form number 15G, their verification part itself says, verification part says that, I am reading the verification part of the form number 15G. I do hereby declare that, to the best of my knowledge and belief, what is stated above is correct, complete, and is truly stated. I declare that the income referred to in this form are not includable in the total income of any other person under section 60 to 64 of the Income Tax Act. I further declare that the tax on my estimated total income, including incomes, kindly note the word income oblique incomes, incomes referred to in column 16, and aggregate amount of income oblique incomes referred to in column 18 computed in accordance with the provisions of the Income Tax Act 1961 for the previous year ending on 31st March 2020, relevant to the assessment year 2020-21 will be nil. I also declare that my income referred to in column 16 and aggregate amount of incomes referred to in column 18 of the previous year relevant to the assessment year 2020-21 will not exceed the maximum amount which is not chargeable to income tax. So the last line is important, and the same line is there under section 197A 1A. The said line says that all income under section 194A, thus under which sections are to be clubbed is mentioned under section 197A. So I read the sections which are to be aggregated, even if you are not furnishing form number 15G or 15H for those incomes, but the person who is furnishing the declaration will himself have to aggregate these incomes under these sections. These sections are 192A, 194A, 194D, 194DA. 194DA means insurance policy amount taxable, 194I, and 194I. So these are the specified section. 192A is the provident fund, recognized provident fund, taxable recognized provident fund. So the important sections are, in my opinion, here two sections which are regularly used, 194A and 194I. So if any of the person who is furnishing form 15G and 15H, if he is having income exceeding 2.5 lakh, if aggregated under 194A and 194I, rental income and interest income, even if the interest income is not from the bank, he is receiving the interest from his friend or relative, it will have to be aggregated. So if this aggregation is exceeding 2.5 lakh, such person cannot furnish the form number 15G, and any person who is a senior citizen can furnish form 15H if his income under this head is exceeding 2.5 lakh, but his tax liability should be nil. In case of the senior citizen, there is a relaxation that his tax liability should be nil, so he can avail the exemption under section 80C also, 80C or others, 80D, 80DD, etc. for senior citizen. But if in case of the person who is not a senior citizen, exemption under section 80C 24 will not have to be looked into if his income is exceeding 2.5 lakhs. So I think I am clear.
Yes, sir. Yes. So wonderfully explained, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, now next question from Preeti Kevlani. Sir, if partner salary is deducted in TDS salary and return filed, what can be done as it is not a salary?
So in my opinion, it is clearly mentioned under the head salary that any salary received by the partner is not a salary. So he is not wrongly written. I think you may revise the return and delete his part and get the refund, or this TDS can be adjusted in next quarter under the head of under any other PAN number. This can be adjusted. You are not required to take the refund. You may adjust it in any other person.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And from Radhika, ATE deduction eligibility is based on accrual or payment basis. ATE deduction eligibility.
ATE education loan interest, only interest deduction in case of interest is allowed, no principal is allowed, and it is allowed only on payment basis, not on accrual basis, unlike section 24.
Okay.
In case of 24, home loan interest is allowed only on accrual basis, is allowed on accrual, but here education is loan interest is only on payment basis, no limit is there, no upper limit is there.
Okay. Sir, can you please explain ATEE double taxation term? ATEEA.
ATEEA. So yes, if any of the person has taken a home loan under section and claiming exemption under section ATEEA, say for example, he has taken a home loan of rupees 40 lakh and he is paying an interest of rupees 4 lakh to the banker. So he can claim deduction of rupees 2 lakh under section 24 and he can claim deduction of rupees 1.5 lakh under section ATEEA. But if, say for example, he has taken a loan of rupees only 15 lakh and he is paying interest of only rupees 1.5 lakh during the whole year, then he cannot claim double deduction of the same amount. He has taken only the loan of rupees 15 lakh, he is paying interest of only rupees 1.5 lakh in the whole year. So he will not be allowed to claim under section 24 1.5 lakh, again under section ATEEA 1.5 lakh. So this is double deduction. So generally we do not expect and we do not do this. But any amount which is not deductible under section ATEEA because of upper limit of 1.5 lakh, the person can go into section 24 and he can claim remaining exemption under section 24, maximum up to 2 lakh.
Okay, sir. One question from Naveen Chandra, sir. MD of the company had been allowed at a salary of 36 lakh per annum and the taxes have been deducted at source regularly. However, the company decided in June of the following year to increase the salary from 36 lakhs to 72 lakhs. And accordingly, the taxes have been deducted and interest on delayed payment of taxes have been made. The question is whether one increased salary will be assessed in the assessment year 2021 or assessment year 21-22, as the salary has not been paid to him, but the company had made the provision for the year ended 31st March 2020.
So in the hands of the employee, the salary is taxable on due basis. The company is required to deduct TDS on salary on payment basis, but in the case of the employee, salary is to be included in his return of income on due basis. So not on payment basis. So employee will be required to pay tax on this income, and the employer may also deduct TDS at the end of the March, even on accrual basis, and then it will be matched in 26 is his return of income.
Okay, sir. Thank you. One question from Sweta Shah. If employee receive daily allowances like DA for meeting daily needs for going abroad for official visit, whether this is taxable?
So please again repeat.
Sir, like few employees going on training at abroad or some official work, and they are receiving DA, daily allowances for meeting daily needs for going abroad for officially visit. So that is taxable?
So no, this will not be taxable if these are incurred for this purpose. If any amount is incurred for this purpose, this will not be taxable.
One question from Dhanesh. Can we claim HRA and even housing loan principal and interest under section 24 and ATC?
If any of the person is not having the house, if simultaneous deduction are not allowed, HRA is not. If any of the person is having the house and simultaneous deduction is not allowed under HRA, he can claim only under section 24 and ATC only. So wherever it is beneficial, if he is having any, then he is not allowed to claim HR.
Right. So one question from Rishi Agarwal, that submission of 12 optional or a compulsory?
12B is optional. It is not
12
compulsory. So it is
one
optional.
question from
12B.
Radhika again, that if an employee is given salary on regular basis, he is also registered under ESI and commission based on the sales made. Can TDS be deducted under section 192 and 194H both?
Yes, if the commission is being given to him, TDS will be deducted under 194H. If the commission is not in the form of the salary, it is based on the target or turnover achieved by him, then TDS can be deducted under 194H. It is allowed. But in that case, he will become a businessman, and in that case, for the purpose of 115 BSE, he will be a businessman. So he will be allowed only to opt once for 115 BSE if he opt. If he doesn't opt, no problem.
Thank you, sir. One question from Harel Ji. April 20 salary paid in May 20 and TDS deducted at the time of payment. What is the due date of TDS to pay TDS?
TDS is liable to be deducted at the time of payment. So the TDS salary has been paid in the month of May. So TDS will have to be deposited before 7th of the June, within 7 days from the end of the month in which the salary has been paid.
One question from Lina. Sir, gratuity received by government employee on retirement is exempt from tax. But can you please give the definition of government employee?
So any state government employee, central government employee, or any other university, college, or any other corporation, corporation or any state government departments are covered under the government departments. So
yes, sir. So only PSU is not covered under this, right, sir? Sir, PSU is not covering this, na, sir? Public sector undertaking.
PSUs, I just immediately cannot say this that whether PSU are covered or not.
Right.
So I will cover it either tomorrow because
yes,
without
according to me, sir, it's not. I mean, so I have worked in a PSU, sir, 2 PSU, Nationalized Bank
so
also another. So I think it's not considered as a government. One question from Rashmi, sir. If director is getting a salary from 2 private limited company, then whether a director has choice to divide his available deduction under 80 and section 24 in the proportion of salary, whether that option is available with the director, sir?
He can claim, but while filing the income tax return, he will be allowed only one deduction.
Right. So he can do proportionate at the time of deduction of TDS, but at the time of return filing, he has to do, I mean, only totaling he has to do again.
Yes.
One question from Prathmesh. If the employee was employed under 2 employers during the year, you said that an employee has an option to disclose his income of previous employer to his current employer. But if the details of salary from previous employer has not been disclosed to the current employer, then there is a possibility that the employee will get 1.5 lakh deduction twice for 1 year from 2 separate employers.
But this double deduction will only be enjoyed only in the form number 16. But when the employee file his income tax return, he will be allowed only the single exemption.
Right.
So at the time of filing returns, many of the cases comes, the employees have to pay a huge tax and they have to pay interest also under section 234B at the time of filing of return.
Yes, sir. So one question from Radhika. Withdrawal of RPF is taxable if withdraw before 5 continuous years of service. What if the person leave the job before 5 years and never join his lifetime? Can he withdraw soon after leaving his job, or should it wait for completion of 5 years?
No, even if he wait for 5 years, because his continuous job should have been of the 5 years. Because
yes.
law does not say that your amount should have been kept for 5 years.
Right, sir. Right. Sir, can you please explain conveyance provision? Kumundini is requested, sir. Conveyance provision.
Conveyance allowance. So
Yes,
the
sir, yes.
conveyance allowance is not allowed nowadays because the conveyance allowance has been merged in the standard deduction. But in case of the handicapped employee, conveyance allowance, if conveyance allowance is allowed to him, they are allowed that the handicapped employee are allowed conveyance allowance of rupees 3,200 per month. So they will be allowed even if they are getting standard deduction. But other employees are not allowed the conveyance allowance. But if any conveyance allowance is allowed, so which conveyance allowance is not allowed? From to and fro from the residence to office, this is not allowed. But if any conveyance allowance is allowed to an employee during the office hours for the performance of his duty, and if he furnishes all the details to the employer that he has incurred the expenditure during the office hours for the performance of his office duty, so there is no limit on such conveyance allowance. There is no such limit on such conveyance allowance. Many of the departments give, so this is like a conveyance reimbursement.
Right, sir, right. Sir, there are few more questions. Can we take, sir? If you
Yes,
allow,
yes.
sir. Okay. So what is difference of medical expenditure and under which section can it be claimed?
Medical expenditure is allowable under section 80D in case of only the senior citizen.
Okay, okay. Sir, can you please guide us by suggesting checkpoints in preparing tax effective salary for employees? Question from Ritesh Desai.
So this is quite long. This is quite long,
Yeah,
but
that we also
whenever
have
I will
another.
find time, I will share with you. So you will be able, you will sharing with this all. I will try to cover all such points also in my deliberation today. But I will try to prepare a note, and you will share with them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Medical insurance premium and preventive health checkup is mutually exclusive or both can be claimed?
No, both can be claimed, but the aggregate deduction should not exceed the limit specified under section 80D. So, say for example, any person who has any medical insurance premium for his family. For what is the family? Family means any person, individual, his spouse, and his dependent children. Only the dependent children are covered. For this purpose, he has given a medical insurance premium of rupees 20,000. In addition to this 20,000, he has incurred a preventive health checkup expenses of rupees 5,000. So this 25,000 is allowed. So, but if any person has incurred an expenditure of rupees 25,000 for his medical insurance premium, and in addition to this, he has paid rupees 5,000 for preventive health checkup. So this is an amount of rupees 30,000. So in this case, he will not be allowed both deduction. He will be allowed maximum deduction of rupees 25,000.
Right, sir. Right. Sir, can PM Care benefit? PM Care contribution may be claimed by a person opting 115 BSc during financial year 2021.
No, during financial year 2021, if he has given any donation to PM Cares, he will not be allowed this benefit under 115 BSc because 80G is not allowable under 115 BSc. So
Right.
many of the persons who are giving donation this time, they all are thinking that before, if they have given donation before 30th June, they will claim this donation in their previous year because they are allowed. Any donation made up to 30th June is allowable in their previous year's income tax return of the financial year 2019-20, assessment year 2020-20.
Right, sir. Sir, one question from Rahul that on electric vehicle, so that if purchased on EMI, then also eligible for deduction under section 80 EEB.
Yes, yes. If he is purchased on EMI, he has taken a loan. EMI, if he is giving any interest, because deduction is allowable only for interest. If EMI is on the basis, if interest portion is included in the EMI, then only on that portion of interest he is allowable up to maximum of rupees 1.5.
Right. So one question from Kumundini is that a handicapped person can claim both 3,600 per month and a standard deduction.
Yes, he can claim both. Yes. Sorry, I had told 3,200. So he can claim a conveyance allowance. As a handicapped person can claim conveyance allowance as well as standard deduction both.
Sir, one question from Prakash. Even though Section 80G is not eligible, but seems to be declared eligible, what is your view, sir? I think the question is incomplete, sir. Even though Section 80G not eligible, but seems to be declared eligible, your view, sir?
I think the person would be asking that donation to any other trust other than PM Relief Fund will be allowed by the employer or not. I think so. So employer cannot allow deduction under Section 80G, but at the time of filing of the income tax return, the employee can claim under Section 80G, for which he could not be allowed by the employer.
Sir, one question from Sejal Kumar. Pre-matured of PF withdrawal is taxable at the tax rate of respective years in which the benefit under Section 80C claim. As we know that the tax rate may be different for each respective years. How this is to be shown in ITR?
So again, repeat please.
Pre-mature of PF withdrawal is taxable at the tax rate of respective years in which the benefit under Section 80C claim. As we know that the tax rate may be different for each respective years, how is to be shown in ITR? I think the question is incomplete or...
Yes. So question is incomplete. So if she will give you the question and you may send to me, I will give tomorrow.
Yes.
Because question is incomplete. So we may take remaining queries on tomorrow or on the last day if there are no much queries. If there are 1 or 2 queries, we may take up.
Sir, we have covered almost all the queries. Only few comments are there. Thank you so much, sir. Nice presentation, like that only, sir.
So thanks to all also. Thanks a lot to all for sparing valuable time.
So I think, sir, we end this webinar for first day here only, sir. Bafna ji, please come. Bafna ji is there, sir. Yeah, Abhishek is also there.
It's my great privilege to propose a vote of thanks to expert speaker on TDS provision, FCA Rajesh Mehta ji, who has delivered a very excellent and elaboratory lecture on the TDS provisions under Section 80C at the various heads like rent, deemed rent, house loan instrument, interest, pension, medical expenses, medical insurance, etc. in details, and solve all queries of the viewers. So this is a very pleasure for us. This is a great great lecture for us and innovative for us and useful for all us. Thank you very much, Rajesh Mehta ji.
Thank you so much, Bafna ji.
Thank you.
Abhishek, your comments.
Ashish ji is also there, so request Ashish ji to say few words for today's session.
Ashish, you unmute yourself, please.
आशीष जी अनम्यूट नहीं हुआ आपका माइक. आशीष बाकलीवाल साहब का माइक अनम्यूट नहीं है. आशीष जी का
अभी हुआ. Yes.
Yeah, Ashish ji.
Yeah.
Yes. It was wonderful to have this seminar and have knowledge sharing with you, sir. I hope 3 more days to go, and everybody will be very joyful to learn new things. And your interactive question answer session, practical problems, people are solving their practical problems as well. Thank you for sir. Thank you today. Thank you for the organization also, Virak bhai and Abhishek bhai.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot to all. Thank you to all.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, meet tomorrow.